I'd like to call to order this committee of the whole meeting of the town of Saugeen Shores and extend a welcome to everyone in the chambers this evening. And the first order of business is a declaration of pecuniary interest, and I'll remind every member that it's your responsibility to declare if you have one, and you can do so now or when it arises on the agenda. Nothing this evening. We have three deputations, and the first is Scott Barry, and he's here from Ontario Power Generation. He's giving us a briefing. Welcome, Scott, and just push the little, I think it's a purple button in the left.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I appreciate the opportunity to come tonight and provide a brief update on Ontario Power Generation and a few items of topic for the area. If I get my cues right. Just want to talk a bit about Ontario Power Generation. As you know, we produce a little over half the electricity here in the province. We have 65 hydroelectric facilities throughout the province and 2 nuclear facilities. And we also have some coal up until about a few months ago. So it was directed by the province of Ontario for the long-term energy plan. We've been assisting the province and the government of the day to move off coal. And we're proud to say we've accomplished that ahead of schedule. And Atikokan and Lambton were the last of the facilities to burn the last coal just before Christmas, and all of the coal has been removed from our sites. Atikokan, which was a coal-burning station, is now being converted to biomass. So it will now become a renewable biomass facility using wood pellets, and that'll be the largest 100% biomass generator in North America. So combined as a company in this jurisdiction in North America is very unique now in producing the amount of electricity and energy that we do, which is emissions-free, strong support of renewables, and low cost. So I think it's something we should all feel proud of, and certainly our employees feel proud of. On the hydroelectric front for the Niagara Tunnel, last year we also completed the expansion. It was a 10.5 kilometer tunnel deep under the Niagara City. That facility was first built about 100 years ago, and now will enjoy another 100 years of renewable water energy for the Niagara Tunnel and for Ontario. So a lot of work in terms of some of the refurbishment of our assets and some of the renewables work that we're doing in meeting the government's long-term policy. We're also taking a hard look at Darlington Station. It's one of the top performing stations in the world, as evidenced by its peers, and one of the top performing stations in Canada. And it's a viable station economically to be refurbished. Nuclear stations reach a half point in their midway through their life of some of the components that need to be replaced. And you've heard of the efforts here at Bruce Power as an example of that, to extend the life of those assets and those facilities. So we're working on that project that's tentatively going to begin in around 2016, and will extend the life of Darlington for another 30 to 35 years. We're working hard on the final planning. We've already done a lot of contracts on the procurement of long lead items for that, and we're preparing a credible cost and schedule that we'll put forth to the public in about a year and a half's time. We also recently completed a unified exercise. You'll remember last year in the county, Bruce Power did a similar thing of a very large emergency preparedness exercise to demonstrate the proficiencies of the procedures and the training of the staff. This one involved for us over 50 agencies, provincially and federally, and over 1,000 participants, and it was an opportunity for us over a long 3 days to demonstrate our effectiveness in protection of the safety of the public and the environment. And as a company, we continue to perform very well on the safety front on all aspects. We have a lot of staff in remote areas, in a lot of facilities and generations. Energy is a form that has hazards and risks to it, and we're pleased that the safety of our staff in preserving the health and safety of themselves and their colleagues and the equipment has been exceptional. Turning closer to this area and talk about our operations, Ontario Power Generation's operations here in Bruce County. As you know, we have a waste facility here. That's how we help support all of Ontario's nuclear facilities to continue to operate. We move the low and intermediate level waste from those facilities, and we bring it here for storage and processing. We don't have a large staff, about 300 staff that work here at the facility, but they're proud staff of their accomplishments of achieving 1 million hours worked without a lost time accident. And when you've got a small group, you're talking a number of years to achieve that and maintain that level of excellence. Our drivers, too, are also highly trained and highly qualified, and they know that their actions and work in the public are in the public eyes, and the safety of the safe transport of the low and intermediate level waste, the custody that they've given that unique responsibility, they really take to heart. And they've traveled over 3 million kilometers, which would be about the equivalent of circumnavigating the world around 75 times. So it's a lot of times on the road. And our Darlington waste facility for used fuel, all of our used fuel, as you know, stays at those locations, at the facilities. Recently received a 10-year license. And our incinerator here at this facility, which helps reduce the environmental footprint for now and in the future for low-level waste, continues to perform exceptionally well in terms of environmental emissions, which are well below all of the regulatory requirements and the license, the MOE, of which we operate under. So looking ahead for our facility, our license is a 10-year license that we currently hold for the Western Waste site. It's going to expire in 2017, and we will be again seeking another 10-year license. Now, 3 or 4 years seems a long way off, but we need to start to think and prepare some thinking around that potential license, which will take us to 2027. I just want to remind folks of the facility and the layout. The Robins Egg blue line to the north is where the proposed location for the DGR, for the Deep Geologic Repository for low and intermediate level waste, will be positioned. The red line in the center, which is bounded by the facilities there, is where our current operations for the low and intermediate level waste are. So all of the waste for our nuclear facilities for low and intermediate has been transported to this facility over 4 decades, since 1974. And that's also where we store the used fuel for Bruce Power, as well as other large objects like the steam generators, which you're familiar with, and the intermediate level waste. When we look ahead down the road, we need to be able to anticipate what our future business needs are. So for a 10-year license, we need to periodically in our business planning re-snap that chalk line and look ahead. And one of the things we envision, given some of the uncertainties with respect to the Deep Geologic Repository and some of the assurances we haven't had for the long-term storage of both used fuel and intermediate level waste and low level waste, we have to ensure that our continued operations can continue to exist and support the operations of existing Ontario facilities. For that reason, in our next license, we envision the need to expand some of the facilities. So the blue line, the dark purple line on the bottom, if you will, is an area of which we've defined as a potential area. As a business opportunity, if needed, we would look to exercise that. So we're going to undertake some environmental studies of that area about the potential of some additional storage buildings. The site itself is extremely well characterized over the life of the facility for 4 decades. We've had extensive environmental assessments, 4 in fact. There's been extensive archaeological digs as well, and of course with every environmental assessment there's monitoring and follow-up programs that follow as part of that requirement of licensing, and they continue to proof out the predicted effects that they were true, that there is no impact, significant impact to the result of our operations. So currently in the existing environmental assessments we have, there's a facility for us to build up to 23 buildings. We anticipate by the year 2031, potentially, again given that there is some uncertainty with respect to the potential transfer of low-level and intermediate-level waste to the DGR. Used fuel storage as well is still very much an early process, which will take many years and decades to resolve. So we need to help support Bruce Power with the continued operations and their identification of potential refurbishment for used fuel. And also, we also envision the ability to further retrieve the existing waste we have, to look at opportunities to resort and continually reduce the amount of waste that's there. And as every operation, we need to potentially look at the opportunities to improve the facilities and enhance the processing and bring some of them up to standards and fire codes, for example, as those change. One of the things that we potentially envision for our license application is the opportunity to process large objects. Steam generator is a good example of a very large object with a very small amount of low-level waste that can be reprocessed, and a lot of that metal sold back into the market. So those are the things we're looking at. So we anticipate what will be different for this license is the potential request for 2 additional low-level storage buildings to take us to 2031, and then the used fuel buildings that I spoke to for Bruce for the used fuel. So that talks about our current operations. I'll just take a moment now to update Mayor and Council on the federal hearing for the Deep Geologic proposal for Ontario Power Generation's low and intermediate level waste. As you know, it's been a long process for well over a decade. A lot of work by ourselves and federal agencies and provincials and others to help inform the public and the federal authorities on the project. Last fall there was the hearing here in this community. It lasted 25 days. It was an extremely robust and open and transparent process. There's over 200 interventions by the public and by experts, all of which were given the opportunity to question and inquiry the evidence that was put forward and share their views and opinions. and the opportunity to also question all of the interveners themselves. So it was a very helpful process to do all that was required to look at all of the information. Since the close of the hearing, the JRP, their role is to gather all of the necessary information to assist them in their potential deliberation around the environmental assessment. Since that time, there's been a number of additional information requests. Now, information requests may seem simple in their description, but in fact, these are very detailed requests. They're put on the public registry, and we as the proponent are asked to help address those information requests. We feel we've done a very adequate job in addressing all of those questions asked, and that the safety case for the DGR continues to remain very sound and very strong. But these are interesting information requests. There's one on, as you can see on the list, geoscientific verification plans. So, for example, if we are given approval to prepare the site and begin construction, and say we get down there and we find something unexpected, what does our geoscientific verification plan look like? What are those triggers that will do something different? Alternative means is also a subject of great interest during the hearings and continues to be so. They wanted additional information around what other options exist. Were they thoroughly examined? What about the status quo? What about a near-surface facility? What about enhancing a surface below the ground? And also, what about public perception of risk? Do different alternative means or technologies provide a different level of safety in terms of the minds of the public, and what is their perception of the risks? So there's a lot of good information that's been put forth onto the registry around that. Waste inventory verification plan. You'll know that was some more recent conversations by Dr. Greening, who challenged some of the calculations and the modeling that we'd done. For that, our modeling as we put forward in the environmental assessment indicated that that's work later in the stage for the operations license. We've been asked to do more work up on that, and we've done that. And the waste isolation pilot project has also been a more recent example in the news. This was one of these DGRs we used as an example to look at the science and the technology. And there's some real interesting findings as a result of the events at the waste isolation plant, which is now on the public registry. So I won't get into the details, but there's some interesting evidence. So the JRP has made the announcement. They feel that there's sufficient information here that warrants additional discussion. They feel it's important enough information that the public needs that opportunity to discuss and share their views and digest and debate the information. For that reason, they've added some additional hearing days beginning September 9th here in the community. Now, this hearing will be specific only to these additional information requests that have appeared since the hearing. Those interveners that were previously registered may apply to come forth and speak to this information. And also interveners that weren't previously registered are also given that opportunity as well. So we'll be back to the community to discuss more of that work. So the federal reviews process, hearings coming. And then the object and the job of the JRP is to, once they believe that there's sufficient information, that they can go away and do their work, they'll close the public registry, they'll make an announcement of that, and the public and interveners will have an opportunity, as we as the proponent will too, to put forward some final submissions if we so choose. And then the JRP will have 90 days to prepare a report around the environmental assessment, and that report will then go to the Minister of Environment for their consideration, of which they'll be granted 120 days to deliberate on the environmental assessment and render a decision. But that doesn't get us a license. From that point, the JRP will take that information contained from the Minister, and we suspect many recommendations that will be added to that, and that will be folded into their work on developing a license. If they so choose, they'll deliberate on that, and if they deem it appropriate, we'll issue that at that time. Other than that, that's really the update. We continue to work on providing the information. We're regularly updating our website, so the issues I talked about for WIP as an example, and the verification of the inventory is on the website. The information requests are all in the public registry, and we continue to share that information and work with the public and our First Nations and Métis communities as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bailey. Any questions? We'll start with Councillor Frost here.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks, Scott. I had one question on when you were talking about different facilities. What's going on with Pickering right now?
So Pickering is reaching its end of life. It's recently we received a license to continue the operation to 2020, and that was a condition. Pressure tubes are the life-limiting component of every nuclear facility. And there's a conservative number that's applied to those, or what's known as full power thermal hours, so number of times. It's like an odometer of your car. when you reach a certain odometer number, the conservative number says, okay, it's time to take that unit out of service. So our work has enabled us to extend the life of Pickering to 2020, or nominally 247,000 thermal hours. So we're working on that, and we anticipate reaching the 2020, and at that time Pickering will be shut down or removed from the grid.
Deputy Mayor Garlock, you have a question? No? Anybody else here? Marcel?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Scott. When you talked about building new facilities out at the site, I think you said 4 additional storage for nuclear spent fuel. How long do you anticipate that'll take to fill that facility, those facilities?
Currently, through all of Ontario's nuclear facilities, we have recently processed 2,000 dry storage containers. The facilities that we have currently at the Bruce Power Station, we have 4 facilities. Roughly 2 of those are filled at this point, about 2.5. So the question was the duration, or so
yeah.
Currently there's 4. We're proposing, if Bruce Power goes ahead with the refurbishment, we anticipate numerous decades of operation. So we anticipate that taking us out to roughly 2040.
Okay, thank you.
Deputy Mayor Charbonneau.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks for the presentation. Scott, I guess my question maybe is related a bit to what Councillor Legault was just asking about. It has to do with employment. I wonder, keeping aside the DGR, we understand what OPG is projecting in terms of employment with regard to that facility, but you mentioned some other things that you're thinking about doing up to 2031. I just wonder, excuse me, is there any additional employment anticipated with connected to those improvements or those changes that you're considering?
I think it's premature at this point in time. Certainly as the waste facility continues to expand and the work and the effort of the stations, I think our minimum complement right now is fully sufficient. If we begin to look at new technologies, our objective is that some of the waste that was originally processed a number of decades ago, we believe there's opportunities to go in and retrieve the non-processable waste. And we've done some recent pilot studies to that. For example, we randomly selected 80 bins. We're able to reprocess those down to 14 bins. So opportunities, I think, clearly exist to reduce the existing footprint and the future footprint for eventual long-term storage. So there are new enhancements around capabilities of technologies and systems that we're looking at, and that would require the additional employment and hiring of additional staff to manage those facilities.
If there's nothing else, thanks very much, Scott. It's always interesting to hear from one of our big employers and a big part of our community, so thanks very much.
Thanks very much. Thanks, everyone.
I was corrected. We have 4 deputations this evening. And we'll go to the second one then. The second one is Scott Saunders and Bruce Martin, and they're here about a new initiative in Southampton. It'll be a business improvement area. And welcome, Scott and Bruce.
Good evening, Mayor Smith and member of councils. Scott Saunders, real estate broker and team leader of the Saugeen team, Remax Land Exchange in Southampton. Here with Bruce Martin, the owner of Martin's Home Hardware and Martin's Bicycle Shop, also in Southampton. And we are representing tonight the Southampton Business Improvement Area Steering Committee. Mayor Smith, we come to address Council tonight to submit to you for your consideration our business case to establish a BIA for the former town of Southampton. The steering committee was formed and has been meeting since late 2013 in response to discussions that stemmed from the Southampton Business Group's desire to have a formal mechanism to represent the interests of all businesses in Southampton and have funding to support the promotion, beautification, and improvements in Southampton. After initial discussion about the formation of a Southampton Business Improvement Area, the steering committee planned a town hall meeting to allow all business owners and commercial building owners the opportunity to hear about the benefits of forming a BIA for Southampton. We sought the expertise of the Ontario Business Improvement Area Association and its executive director, Kay Matthews, as well as the experience of Rick Clark, the Kincardine Downtown Development Manager for their BIA, and Stephen Murray, the Coordinator of Community Services and Special Projects for the Municipality of Kincardine, and Laurie Smith, who is the Kincardine BIA Chair and also a business owner. That meeting went very, very well. And somewhat in jest, the folks from Kincardine challenged those present to form a Southampton BIA to promote business in Southampton. Otherwise, we were assured that their activities in Kincardine would ensure that all of the tourist dollars were spent in Kincardine before they reached Southampton. As you will read in our business plan, this meeting was well received, and the information presented not only supported the creation of a Southampton BIA, but begged the question, what have you been waiting for? In doing our research, the steering committee has been warned about two pitfalls that have been learned in the creation of other BIAs. The first is, don't make your business improvement area too small. It needs to represent the interests of all of the businesses that it will promote. And second of all, don't tie minimum and maximum levy amounts to your establishing bylaw, as this will limit the future growth of the BIA. The steering committee has addressed these concerns by including all businesses in the former town of Southampton, with the belief that by promotion, beautification, and improvement in Southampton, that all businesses, whether they are on the gateway, whether at the river, whether they're in someone's home or in the downtown core, will be positively affected. Secondly, we've established the need to set both minimum and maximum levy amounts, but have proposed that these amounts are tied to the annual budget that will be proposed by the Southampton BIA and passed by the Saugeen Shores Council annually. This process ensures that all are levied an appropriate share should the BIA budget increase or decrease in coming years. The establishment of a Southampton BIA will also bring together a couple of smaller ad hoc groups that are now functioning with a unified voice that is officially recognized and represents Southampton. The Southampton Business Group will become BIA members. The Core Action Team Southampton, or CATS, will function under the BIA umbrella, and the BIA will supply membership on the Downtown Revitalization Action Committee for the town of Saugeen Shores. The Southampton BIA will also ensure that funds available through Bruce County Tourism and Spruce the Bruce and the Saugeen Shores Chamber of Commerce are effectively utilized to promote Southampton and Southampton business. The steering committee has prepared and attached the business case for you to consider, and it summarizes the proposed boundaries of the BIA, our outreach efforts to our potential membership, the proposed goals and objectives of the BIA, the preliminary budget to undertake those proposed goals and objectives, and a recommended levy approach. As the steering committee worked through each of these key points, the need for a Southampton BIA became more and more apparent. Mayor Smith, the BIA steering committee is pleased with the response from the Southampton business community and looks forward to the establishment of the Southampton BIA to become a partner with the town of Saugeen Shores and an advocate for business in Southampton. We ask for Council's consideration to pass a bylaw to establish a Southampton business improvement area and allow the Board of Management to be formed in 2014. The Board of Management will then be able to work with its membership and prepare and submit a budget for Council's consideration for 2015. We thank you for your consideration of our proposal.
Thank you, Scott. Questions? Vice Deputy Mayor Gallagher first.
Thanks, Scott. Bruce, I have to turn my mic on here. Sorry about that. Really happy to see the inclusivity of your study and your area. I think that one of the problems with BIAs is they tend to be exclusive to 2 or 3 blocks of Main Street, and by that you get divided support. And I think you guys are going at it the right way. It will be difficult. It won't be simple. But I think at the end of the day, we'll have a much better handle and a much better way to look after downtown Southampton and businesses' interests. And I really support what you're doing and congratulate you on all your work. And I don't think you'll have any problem getting it past council. Thanks, guys.
Excellent.
Thanks for those comments.
Councilor Huber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Perhaps this will go in two directions. I would like Linda perhaps to tell us how this unfolds in terms of support and then how it goes beyond that, because I know that there's a process. But I happened to be sitting at a table when Scott did his pitch to a business owner. I'm just curious, Scott, have you been able to reach all of the businesses? I know you were trying to talk personally with them all, and you know, I know that was a big part of the plan. Have you been able to get out to everybody?
It is. The steering committee has just a talking point brochure that we have been taking to all of the business owners and commercial property owners in Southampton. There's a number of those, of course, that are out of town, so they were all mailed that document to make sure that we did touch base with all of those people. We have probably hit most at this point. There are a few elusive folks that we're still working on, and we'll continue over the next week or so to make sure we have the entire business community allotted and divided up. So.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, there is a report that's forthcoming just after the deputation, which outlines the process. So I can certainly respond to that when we get to that part of the agenda.
Councillor Seaman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too, Scott, I would say it's a long time coming, and I'm glad to see it here, finally. I have one question. You mentioned in-home businesses. Now, just who would you be targeting? That a computer programmer or grandmother that knits some socks, or who are you chasing here?
It's not really a matter of chasing, but through the BIA levy process, any property owner that has commercial assessment on their property is automatically a member of the BIA. So someone who runs a small home-based business that is recognized by MPAC as a partial commercial use of a building automatically becomes a member of the BIA.
Yep, thank you.
Deputy Mayor Charbonneau.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks, guys, for the presentation. I just think you look at all the things that the Southampton Business Group has been able to accomplish over the last many years by just walking up and down the street, knocking on doors, asking for money, and doing the kind of work that you're doing, but just slogging it out, just trying to raise money and get stuff done. And, an amazing amount of work got accomplished that way. And I just think the reason why this BIA venture is so great is because it's going to give you built-in resources. Money's going to come at the beginning of every year, and all those people who spend all that energy raising all that money are going to be able to turn all that energy toward actually doing stuff on the street, which is fantastic, which is great. And I just want to thank you guys and your whole steering committee, because this has not been easy. It takes a lot of work to do what you did and to get up the energy and decide it's the right thing to do and do it. I guess I just conclude by saying that I hope that all the businesses in Southampton are supportive of this venture, because I really believe that it's going to benefit the entire business community in Southampton hugely. And I hope we don't get a single letter opposing it, because I think it's absolutely the right thing to do. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I certainly agree with a number of the comments here. I think there's been a number of different committees in Southampton over the years, and they're now with the BIA all the form of process where you can start to address and really take some ownership of the idea. But I've heard that statement from Kincardine a number of times about where they're going to try and get all the street organized, and I assure you, and I'm pretty confident that our downtowns are up to the challenge and won't take that laying down. So thanks very much, Sean.
Thank you.
Our next deputation is Rob Shave, and he's here about the Adelaide Street intersection.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, councillors, members of staff, and members of the public. The deputation tonight is on the proposed Adelaide Street intersection with Highway 21. My purpose here is to point out what I think is some information that may not have been fully appreciated up to this point in the design and consideration of this intersection, and it really relates to safety. I think when we complete the Adelaide Street portion that is west of 21 and it comes to meet Highway 21, and in the design there is a depressed curb, we're inviting pedestrians and cyclists and disabled people to cross at that intersection, and yet because of the sighting distance for northbound vehicles, it's actually increased hazard, increased risk level to cross at that intersection compared to what we have now. So here's an overhead view, and I've marked on, and this was done just using Google, I've marked on here what the angle of the curvature is and the chord or the distance between the two straight sections, and it's by my estimate 48 degrees and 153 meters between the start and end point of the curve. And I compare that to Rankin Street on Highway 21, where it's 35 degrees and 302 meters. So the Rankin Street curve is more than twice as shallow, or another way to put it is the curve coming into Adelaide Street is twice as tight as the Rankin Street curve. Now, I had a very helpful discussion with members of staff last week, and we discussed the curvature. And the assumption was that it's not unique and it's not different because the Rankin Street curve is very similar. But I think I've demonstrated here that it's not similar. And we actually have a unique case at Adelaide Street. So because of that geometry, it's going to be very tight, and it's going to warrant some special consideration to make sure that we're not creating a safety risk for pedestrians, cyclists, and disabled users of that intersection. So again, I would hope that others can verify these figures, but I think the sighting distance, based on my measurements and the overhead view, is about 92 meters. The provincial guidelines, and the MTO has in its documentation, based on geometry and highway speed, all of the safety distances and the sighting distances that they need. In their guidelines, it's 60 to 65 meters in a 50 zone. And then when you say the typical stop distance for a vehicle is 30 to 35 meters, it looks like it's safe and it meets the guidelines. We have 92 meters, the province requires 60 to 65, and a vehicle can stop within 30 to 35. However, guidelines are one thing and the reality is something else. Traffic is slowing down from 60 to 50 in that location. Pedestrians don't have a long-distance view of approaching traffic, and you can see that when I'll get to the next slide. And stopping distance calculations, and admittedly in the literature, they use best case dry pavement conditions. So we'll take a close look at the street view. This split view shows on the lower part you see the bird's eye view, and it's kind of hard to make out. But there's a little figure there right at the corner of the apartment condominium building, and that is approximately the 92 meter mark. And then the upper half of the image shows what you would see if you were at that location. And the intersection is just beyond the tree, the closest tree on the right-hand side. That is where pedestrians would be starting to cross on the highway. Now at that location, you're 92 meters from the intersection. And that's what you would see approaching the intersection there. The sight line, as I mentioned before, is 92 meters. Let's talk about stopping distance. According to the literature, it's made up of two components, something called thinking time plus braking distance. So the thinking time is the time it takes someone to recognize that there is an obstruction and apply full brakes. And that's usually 1.5 seconds. And then the braking rate is how long it takes to stop the vehicle. So at 50 clicks, you're traveling almost 14 meters per second. So it's very simple math. 1.5 seconds at 14 meters plus 10 meters stop distance is 31 meters. That's lots of room, right? We've got 92 meters, you can stop within 31. Now a heavy truck is a bit different from a car. Typically it's twice as far, so it will take 61 meters to stop. Those are both safe. Okay, now what about non-ideal stopping distance? thinking time is documented to be as long as 3 to 4 seconds. If you're a distracted driver, if you're fatigued, if alcohol is involved, or there's poor visibility, it can take up to 4 seconds before you react to an obstruction. And if you're speeding, not seriously speeding, you're only doing 60 and a 50, instead of traveling 14 meters a second, you're traveling 16.7. And if the pavement happens to be wet, you're not going to stop in 10 meters, you'll stop in 27. And this is just math. You add all these up, and your stopping distance is 94 meters, but you've only got 92. So if there's somebody in the way, you're going to hit them. If you're a heavy truck, under the same conditions, it's going to be 122 meters. You're going to be 20 meters beyond where 30 meters beyond where the pedestrian would have been. And if you happen to be doing 70 instead of 50, and you have a slow reaction time, maybe you're 111 meters. So visually, you can see on this image here, the blue line is the sighting distance, and the various hash marks on the red line is the overshoot distance, or the distance beyond which you should have stopped to avoid injuring somebody in the crosswalk. Now, these are not impossible scenarios. People speed. People are distracted sometimes when driving, and sometimes the pavement is wet, and sometimes there's poor visibility. And this particular intersection, when it goes through, will be the most likely place in Saugeen Shores for this incident to occur. There's no other curve as sharp as this in a built-up area on Highway 21. This is it. This is the worst place we can put an intersection on Highway 21. So are these worst-case assumptions impossible to happen, or are they valid? Well, depending on the traffic study, you've got between 400 and 600 northbound vehicles per hour. Maybe that's 2,800 vehicles a day. Maybe that's 1 million a year, just based on those numbers. So let's say we have 1% of drivers, of 1% of those 1 million northbound vehicles is not doing the right thing. That's 10,000 instances when you can have a car or a truck that's speeding, a driver with a slow reaction time, poor visibility, wet pavement. I mean, how often does it rain? How often is the road wet? When you start playing with numbers like this, it's very difficult. And I'm certainly not here to say that, I've proven an accident will take place. That's the last thing anybody wants. And in any kind of safety analysis, I can't say that if it goes through the way we've planned Adelaide Street intersection, there will be an accident. But I've demonstrated that there is an elevated level of risk there. Now, in organizations that I've worked in, we foster what's called a safety culture. And when you're dealing with complex systems and a pedestrian crossing, or a pedestrian crossing, but any intersection is a complex system. You have drivers approaching in both directions, you have pedestrians, you have weather conditions, you have the braking capability of the vehicle, you have the alertness of the driver. It is a complex situation. And in a safety culture, you ask yourself, if something can go wrong, then sooner or later it will go wrong. So something could go wrong at this intersection. The Canadian National Transportation Safety Board looks at accidents in the transportation field. And what they report is it's not just one thing that goes wrong, it's a combination of things that go wrong, and the cumulative risk reaches the point where the accident took place. So at Adelaide Street, we can foresee these conditions. Nothing has happened yet, the road's not built, but we can imagine that there is an elevated risk there based on the geometry of the curve, the approaching speed, statistics from other municipalities and provincially and nationally. So can we do anything about that? So I have a few suggestions. Could we put a controlled intersection there? So I don't think that's viable because of the short sighting distance, and that's an interesting point in itself. If it's not safe to put a controlled intersection there, where you have a stoplight and approaching drivers may not have sufficient stopping time to meet a red light, how can it be safe to put an invitation for pedestrians to cross? If we applied to the MTO to put a traffic control signal there or a pedestrian control traffic signal, I think the answer would be, I'm sorry, it's too close to the curve. And yet, when we make that sidewalk coming out of Adelaide Street with the depressed curve leading out onto the highway, we're saying, cross the road here, it's safe. It's safe to do so. Other suggestions could be changing the curve. That's a huge project. I don't think that's viable, at least not in the short term. Perhaps a pedestrian crossing traffic signal elsewhere, or maybe move the one at Morpeth, or try and reduce the speed. But the depressing news is I've made some inquiries with MTO, and although it's in your jurisdiction, your purview to install and make decisions on where traffic signals can go and to set speed limits, the MTO will approve them only if they have sufficient traffic warrants. So that's a problem for us. There is a new intersection planned, and you're constrained by the curvature. We can appreciate there's some safety risks there, and yet the MTO may not approve any mechanism to improve safety. I want to make a comparison to a similar intersection in Ottawa, similar geometry. Coming off the McDonald-Cartier Bridge, there was road work done in the early part of 2001 to change the curve to bring the traffic more smoothly onto King Edward Avenue. And there was a cross street called Cathcart. Similar speeds, slowing down to 50 kilometers an hour. Citizens made deputations to council. They were concerned about the safety of that intersection. So over a 5-year period at that intersection, which met all of the ministry guidelines and met all of the codes and was stamped by professional engineers, over a 5-year period, they had 1,500 accidents, more than 200 people went to hospital, and there were 4 fatalities. And in the 2 years when they began discussing whether to put a pedestrian-controlled signal in there, there were another 2 fatalities. So in some ways it's very similar. It was a much busier road. They had 50,000 vehicles a day. But they also had a traffic island in the middle, so pedestrians only had to cross 3 lanes. It was a one-way turning only. They had other signage up. They did a lot of things to try and make it safe, and yet in the end, after 7 years, they approached the ministry and they said, do we have a case to lower the speed? And the MTO said, yes, you do. But it took 1,500 accidents, 200 people or more in hospital, and 6 fatalities. So I would recommend to council that we have an opportunity here. Nothing has been built. Take a look at the pedestrian-controlled traffic signal in Port Elgin. MTO, and I've inquired there, they have no record of the rationale for that, but perhaps in the paper archives of council minutes there might be something there that adds to our information source. Why was a pedestrian crossing with a controlled traffic signal put in there? Can we make the same justification to the MTO? And can we make the best decision for this particular crossing, not only relying on what the MTO guidelines say and not relying only on the staff reports to date, but be cognizant of the fact that this is a very sharp corner relative to other corners.
Rob, I think you made your point. Just if you can kind of summarize for us.
I'm sorry, I've gone over time. I think that's just about it. That's just about it, Mayor Smith. I would only ask that we make the best decision possible here. Nothing can be 100%, but if we make the best decision, if each of you makes the best decision, then you've done the best that can be done. Thank you.
I think that's our objective, Rob. But just before we go, there may be some questions, though. Any questions or comments? Councillor Huber.
It's really a comment. Opening up Adelaide Street provides another access road to the beach, and this intersection is going to be well used. And I have some concern about a number of things, and I appreciate Rob's research and information. Just as an observational point, we've been hearing about difficulties in downtown Port Elgin. Today when I drove home at about 11:30 from work, there was a service vehicle for a company off on the shoulder, right on the curve, guy talking on his cell phone. At least he was off the road. There was a transport truck parked on the highway in a no parking zone, obviously in at Tim Hortons. And then there was a courier company truck parked illegally in front of the Max Milk. And it was just, 2 lanes of traffic. Some people think there's 2 lanes. Some people think there's only one. It was like this weaving motion getting through there. And I can just see this escalating. So I guess I don't know how we get some information from either Public Works or from the police department about what could be possible at that intersection, because I really do see it as kids coming from the other side of the highway. It's now a route to the beach that, I can see bikes coming down Adelaide now to get across to go to the Long Dock. Rexall's right there too, so you can see more people. And there is potential here for some safety concerns, and I don't know how we proceed. The speed limit, I've had people tell me that we should make the speed limit lower all the way from South Street all the way in now with the other activity that's going on. But is it possible to get some kind of report from Public Works and from the police about just what potentially could be done at this intersection? I know Stuart was talking about a turn lane, but I just think it's going to be a very well-used crossing the highway point. And
to your
we
point,
should be concerned.
I think we certainly can, and I think, Rob's raised some good points here, and we can take them back to Stuart and Public Works and Police Services. And the Police Services monitor and track where our areas of highest concern or where we have the most accidents. And so it's instructive to see where those are and perhaps what causes it. You may or may not know what causes it, but and we'll have that information, and I think that's what we'll ask of Stuart and Public Works for a recommendation for that intersection. Is there any other questions for Rob then? If not, thanks very much, Robert.
I'll tell you that afterwards. You're welcome.
And our fourth deputation is Peter Stark, and he's here reshaping development in Southampton. Welcome, Peter.
Thank you, Mayor Smith, Council, and Linda White for facilitating what I'm about to say. I think it was the Heinrich development that, for me, it triggered concerns I've been having for a long time about the nature of development. I'm not opposed to development. It's inevitable. I think development should be shaped to serve various public needs. I think the Heinrich development is an example of what perhaps isn't happening. I think there's a strong disconnect between what's happening on the street and statements in the official plan about maintaining the identity of the community. I'm trying to find out where this disconnect lies, what's the reason for that. I've had some helpful discussions with county planners and on this, and I will suggest where I think the disconnect is shortly. On the Heinrich development, there are a number of public concerns you've heard. I've attended 2 meetings, full house meetings, the replacement of the existing berm, road traffic issues, which you've heard about now, pedestrian cycle movements, highway crossing, in connection perhaps the rail trail. I say the continuation of the rail trail and amenities such as parkettes, noise issue, lighting issue, water quality. You'll be dealing with that later or at this meeting. Some of these I think have been resolved. Others I think, to me at least, are very ambiguous. I may come back to that at the end of this presentation. Other developments on the highway raise other or similar issues. This one, largely the large parking lot in the front, large expanses of asphalt, cookie cutter, commercial architecture, iconic signs that are in your face. I understand Tim Hortons was cooperative and much was achieved. I understand that Rexall did see the guidelines I'll be talking about in a few minutes, which are voluntary at the moment, and this was their answer to those guidelines. Tim Hortons changed some things. This recently went up, Max, as you see, large masses of asphalt, no screening from the streetscape, from the street, iconic signs that are very, I would say, overbearing. I mentioned these, the cookie cutter corporate architecture, large parking areas adjacent to the highway, the lack, this concerns me most, the lack of significant screening using shrubs and trees. I think this is becoming more urgent. All we need is one other large development, and this place is going to change dramatically. I noticed this property for sale adjacent to Foodland's grocery store on the other side of the river, and just across the street is on the lower right a large area that is, I suppose, prime at some time for redevelopment. There is a better way. I was surprised to see this planning document that was produced a few years ago after 18 months of work. I understand with municipal planners and county planners after a series of public workshops, and the guidelines were based on the official plan and the zoning bylaws. And I understand that these have not been adopted by council, but they are entirely voluntary. And also it was Max that saw these, and you can see the influence that a voluntary guideline has on a corporate organization. The objectives of the guideline, I don't like to read this stuff really, but to create an entrance to the community and a corridor that emphasizes the attractiveness of the community, to improve pedestrian movements, and to integrate new development with landscaping and building design. I don't think this has happened. The draft guidelines made quite a number of suggestions. I've just picked a few out for brevity. Treed mediums in selected areas of the highway roadway. That may be difficult, if not impossible. As I say, I just raised a few. Setbacks with seating areas, vegetative screens. I think this is perhaps one of the most important recommendations. With trees, single rows or double rows of trees. I think setbacks could be mandatory, allowing for snow buildup during the winter, and still having screens that basically shield these developments from road traffic. Other recommendations, green spaces along the corridor, not just solid development, integrated with new and existing biking trails. One of the issues with Heinrich is what's going to happen to the rail trail. It just stops. I think this would have been a nice opportunity to invite a developer to cooperate in extending a rail trail, perhaps having a sitting or a parkette nearby. Didn't happen. Another recommendation, I think this is really important, is reduce visual impact of corporate architecture. A small sign on the highway is, I think, adequate enough to indicate that there's a Walmart nearby. You don't have to be hit over the head with it. Other recommendations, placing parking lots wherever possible behind the buildings so they don't dominate the streetscape, subdividing parking areas into smaller landscaped islands, and using different kinds of paving materials, not always asphalt. Sometimes, in some cases, turf blocks may be useful, which would facilitate subsurface drainage. These are some examples I pulled out of the guidelines. This is what a car wash could have looked like. Car wash building here with islands for gasoline. Oh no, I believe this is a car wash, a convenience store. What struck me about this diagram, this wishful thinking diagram, is all the landscaping, the trees and the shrubs that basically shield the development from the roadway. Another example where you can't see it too well, but you'll notice here a number of parking islands. This is a large parking lot divided up into different zones, all of them landscaped. Again, this would break up the large parking areas. So I asked Council to adopt the guidelines. I understand they've not been adopted. They're informal right now. I asked Council to formally adopt the guidelines, direct staff to do what is necessary to do to bring them into the official plan and make them work. Apply the guidelines to the Heinrich development before it receives approval, which I realize may be too late, but I felt I needed to say this. And declare a moratorium of development along the Highway 21 corridor until these actions can be taken. This might seem like an extreme statement. It indicates to you my sense of urgency. All we need is another 1 or 2 developments, and I think the Highway 21 corridor would be spoiled. We would look like every other commercial district in North America. There's no need for that. We can still have the developments. I think we can still have an attractive place to live. If Council moved to adopt the draft guidelines and directed staff to do so, I think a lot of the urgency would disappear and a moratorium might not be necessary. Just in closing, I'd like to read you just a few snippets of the objectives of the official plan dated December 10th, 2012. These are examples. I think you will all imagine what I've just shown and can see for yourself how there's a disconnect between what's actually occurring on the street and what is in the official plan. One section to ensure of the plan, the goals and the objectives of the plan, is to ensure that new developments do not adversely impact the character of the community. Another section on lifestyle, to provide a linked, accessible system of public parks, open space, and trails. Heinrich development would have been an opportunity to achieve that. Another section on service and transportation, to promote the beautification of the town, to enhance landscaping and buffering, I emphasize the word buffering, features particularly within core commercial areas, and, I'll emphasize this, along arterial roadways. Another section under services and transportation, objective to maintain and improve the pedestrian and cycling trail system. Another section, the last section I'm going to quote, under consultation and community engagement, is to improve public consultation opportunities and public participation levels for land use planning matters. I raised this last because I only became aware of the Heinrich development because it came up for a minor variance. I understand from talking with the planner that had that not occurred, I would not have known about the development until I saw it in cement and asphalt. I think there's something wrong about this. I urge you, I think the disconnect is, here's an example in the Heinrich development, which I think illustrates the nature of the disconnect between what's happening on the street and the official plan. And it is, first of all, a response to a comment that the developments that are occurring are ribbon developments. And the comment by a staff member was that ribbon development technically is unplanned development in a sprawl-like fashion along a stretch of road. Obviously, the staff person was referring to the Heinrich development, which is certainly not unplanned. But I think what this betrays is the lack of the big picture. There's another example of that. Not taking the opportunity to extend the rail trail by asking a developer to become involved in this because it occurs in a brownfield, formerly industrial area. And the remark about this was that brownfields are not subject to environmental site analysis unless residential use is proposed. Of course, there's no residential use proposed for behind the Heinrich development or anywhere in that section of the undeveloped rail trail. But I think these are two examples where the details of particular developments are being looked at fine. They're being looked at fine. But nobody's looking at the big picture. Nobody's looking at how all these single developments are accumulating and affect the total picture. I think there's a need for council to do that, or a need for another kind of a committee to oversee the big picture. Thank you.
Questions or comments? I thank you, and I have one comment, and part of this development, or when we look at these things, we're driven by the Planning Act of Ontario, and we're forced to update our official plan every 5 years. That's the document that sets out many of these things. We've just gone through that exercise. We've been through, just in the third year now, a number of public consultations and public meetings, and we finally got it approved about a month ago. So I think there's lots of opportunity, Peter, if you make an effort to try and get involved. All of these issues will be on the website, and you're welcome to participate in those meetings. Diane.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was a participant in the meetings that led to the design guidelines. I think a couple of other people around the table were as well. And it was disappointing that it was another report that just, we looked at it and then it went onto a shelf. And it comes up every now and again, but we don't always seem to link things together. So I appreciate Peter doing that. I guess what I'm curious about, though, is how do we, for example, the Heinrich development, and, I've spoken out on behalf of trees in the past, and I was in to see the chief building official because it wasn't clear to me in the site plan what the tree selection was and where the trees were going to be. And I'm a firm believer, boy, if there's not power lines overhead, let's encourage and let's require some big trees to be planted, and trees that will be the mature legacy trees of the next generation. Anyway, I did see the drawing, and there's linden trees in the plan, and there's some Colorado spruces. Personally, I don't think there's enough, but there's a few there. How do we, as council, because we see site plans sometimes as negotiations and discussions have gone along, how do we as council, though, encourage staff not to be unnecessarily aggressive, but to be more aggressive and to try and get a few more things that will be advantageous for their project and for our community? How do we do that? I read in the Toronto Star often about developers doing really creative things, and I realize we're not Toronto, but doing creative things with art and green space and trees, and we seem to be kind of satisfied with a few trees and a few shrubs. How do we encourage more aggressive requests or asks? And maybe we'll get a few, maybe we won't, but how do we do that? I'm just curious, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think that we are making tangible progress in that respect. Through the official plan update, we have firmer language that deals with some of these issues that have been raised tonight specifically. Unfortunately, the design guidelines, even if adopted by council as opposed to being received by council, are not an enforceable tool. What we need to do, and we have started now the process of updating our zoning bylaw, for example, we need to create zoning standards that force the built form and the landscaped open space on private property to a higher level. And as well, there's been issues raised with respect to the signage, for example. We are in the midst of updating our sign bylaw again partly in response to staff concerns about the MAC signage itself that didn't align with the design guidelines. So we're, as I was saying, going through a process of doing that. But I did want to comment on the design guidelines themselves. Staff have found them as a helpful tool. In fact, we sent the MAC site plan back 3 times until they moved the building forward and put it on the corner, similar to the slide that was just shown by the deputant, to bring it forward. And the Heinrich siting, in fact, was also moved forward on site to bring it in line and shift 1 row of parking to the back. So we are using design guidelines as a lever as best we can in the absence of zoning standards to try and implement the objectives. And I firmly believe we've had some success in that regard. Neither site would look like they would do or will without us having had a number of long discussions with those developers. The same conversation is happening with a couple of sites in Port Elgin where we have a standard of a 30% open space area. So there's some opportunity to change the site and add things to those sites. And we're having those conversations with those people as well. We're trying to force more green onto the asphalt. And as I say, I think we're making tangible progress. It may not be the speed that the community wants, but I think we will have more tools at the point where council deals with the update to the zoning bylaw. We can require, for example, that parking be behind the front facade of the building. It's not a tool that you've used so far, but it would force green at the front as a zoning standard, as opposed to us saying it would be really nice if you followed this guideline and we did that, for example.
I thank you. Councillor Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks for the presentation, Peter. Larry, in your opinion, with the 30% guideline for green space that we require from developers, how does that compare to other communities? Is it on the high side, or?
I don't believe it's on the high side. I think where we have perhaps had some issues before is the green just might be grass, and what we'd like to see are things planted on it that actually grow up and provide the buffering that the community is looking for. And that's a challenge, and when you're redeveloping a site that doesn't have any open space on it, for example now, it's more of a challenge to those folks to try and retrofit it. And so that's a struggle for us. So somebody starting with like a greenfield blank slate has more flexibility. I believe the number of trees on the Heinrich site are in excess of the design guideline standard, and I stand to be corrected on that, but we have more trees proposed there than what even our design guidelines are saying should be there. So as I say, I believe staff are moving forward in a very logical, tangible path to get that type of development that we want to see happen in those places.
Thank you. Any further questions? And thank you very much, Mr. Stewart.
I'm on now. Not being a planner or having experience on council, I do not have the right terminology and language to ask this question correctly. My question is, I understand that for the guidelines to be part of the official plan and required of a developer, they have to be consistent with the bylaws that already exist, or the bylaws that already exist have to be changed. I'm sorry if I'm not expressing this quite clearly, but that's my understanding. My question is, why have these guidelines not been pushed to change the necessary bylaws to make the guidelines work? Is there something about the guidelines?
I think there's, I don't remember, I remember some discussion on it, but there are some things in that guidelines that I suspect the council at the time probably didn't wholly agree with, and so they didn't adopt the entire guideline. I suspect, and there's some of them I think they had to do that there was some height restrictions, there was a number of things. So, and that, to be honest with you, Peter, I was trying to recall why, but I think what the CEO has said, he's used them fairly extensively in trying to, in negotiations with developers to try and achieve what the guidelines were set out to do. But
I think I did note, Mr. Mayor, that there's kind of a chronology to this thing. The new official plan gives us a much firmer foundation. That official plan was approved, as the Mayor indicated, a short couple of months ago. Staff are in the midst of updating the zoning bylaw. That's where the teeth are. And so council will be presented through the course of this year and early in the new term next year with a series of changes to the zoning bylaw that will apply universally across the municipality. Some of those changes will entrench some of the provisions in the design guidelines to ensure it is a requirement as opposed to something that we ask them to do. It'll be up to council to decide if that's appropriate at the time or not, or if existing language in the bylaw should be retained.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda then is General Government Staff Report, and it has to do with the Southampton BIA, and our clerk, Linda White's going to present.
Thank you. As we've heard this evening, we've received a presentation from the Steering Committee for the Southampton Business Improvement Area. As explained by the Deputant, the Steering Committee has been actively working since last December to create their business case and preliminary budget, which justifies the need for a business improvement area within the boundaries of the former town of Southampton. The Steering Committee has attempted to contact each commercial and industrial assessed property owner within Southampton for the purpose of informing and educating the business community of the benefits of a business improvement area. As we heard from the deputation, the feedback from the Steering Committee's outreach efforts has been positive. The Municipal Act provides municipalities with the authority to designate improvement areas and establish a board of management to oversee the management, beautification, and maintenance of the municipally owned land, buildings, and structures in the improvement area, beyond that provided at the expense of the municipality, and to promote the area as a business or shopping area. Council has the authority to pass a bylaw to designate a business improvement area and establish a board of management. However, prior to passing such a bylaw, the clerk of the municipality must first give notice to all commercial and industrial assessed properties within the proposed BIA area. Notice of council's intention to pass the bylaw to create the BIA must be mailed to each property owner within the former town of Southampton who owns commercial or industrial assessed property. Within 30 days of the notices being mailed, the property owners must provide a copy of the notice to their tenants if the tenant is responsible for paying all or part of the taxes on the property. The property owners and the tenants then have 30 days to notify the clerk in writing if they object to the passing of the bylaw. If property owners and tenants are in support of establishing a BIA, they do not have to respond to the town. At the conclusion of the 60-day notice period, a bylaw can be passed unless the following occurs. If we receive objections that are received by the clerk that represent at least 1/3 of the total number of persons entitled to receive the notice, and those objectors are responsible for at least 1/3 of the taxes levied for purposes of the general local municipal levy for the commercial and industrial assessed properties within the proposed BIA area. In anticipation of council's support to establish a BIA in Southampton, the attached bylaw has been drafted. The draft bylaw establishes the area within the former town of Southampton as the BIA area and creates a board of management. And the draft bylaw also establishes the following. It proposes the composition of the board of management will be a minimum of 5 members, including 1 council member, with a maximum of 9 members. The term of office for the board runs concurrently with the term of council. The board must hold at least 1 annual general meeting and 3 board meetings annually. The board shall select a chair, a vice chair, secretary, and treasurer from amongst its members, and the roles are detailed in the draft bylaw. Board members are not paid position, but members will be reimbursed for reasonable expenses incurred directly related to their function as board members. The board is responsible for making decisions on policy affecting itself and the BIA, and establishing and appointing members to committees as may be required to accomplish the work of the BIA. The board has the authority to grant to them the authority to grant it to them through the Municipal Act. The Municipal Act does restrict the board from spending any money unless it is included in the budget approved by council or is in a reserve fund. It cannot incur any indebtedness extending beyond the current term of council, extending beyond the current year without the prior approval of council, and they may not borrow any money. Additional restrictions are contained in Section 6.5 that would prevent the BIA from supporting political candidates or parties, fund improvements on private property with the exception of the removal of graffiti, and the board is restricted from participating in OMB hearings, Committee of Adjustment, or other tribunals unless authorized by the vote of the membership. The Board of Management is a local board of the municipality and must follow the town's procedural bylaw and the rules set out in the bylaw with respect to quorum, notice of meetings, rules of procedure, including the conflict of interest, etc. The board must maintain all the necessary books and records of the board, submit an annual budget for council's approval, and provide an audited financial statement completed by the town's auditor. Purchasing goods and services is allowed by the board provided it is approved in the current year's budget, and 3 quotes are received prior to purchasing goods and services ranging in price from $5,000 to $15,000. A request for proposal or tendering process is required for items over $15,000. Finally, the bylaw authorizes the municipality to levy a charge against the commercial and industrial assessed properties located within the business improvement area. The amount of the levy will be set by the annual budget that is prepared by the board and approved by the membership and council. The bylaw sets a minimum charge of 0.511% of the annual budget and the maximum charge at 2.215% of the annual budget. And we just outlined for illustration purposes. So based on 2014 assessments and a budget of $29,350, all commercial and industrial properties within the area will be charged between $150, which is the minimum levy, and $650, which would be the maximum levy. Property between the minimum and the maximum levy would be charged $1 per 1,000 of their assessment. For example, a property assessed at $498,000 would be charged a levy of $498. If the budget increases in a future year by 2%, the minimum and the maximum levies will increase proportionately, as will the dollar value per thousand assessment. This example is based on the assumption that the assessed values do not change. In response to the request from the Southampton Business Improvement Area Steering Committee, staff is recommending that Council commence the process to establish a BIA in the former town of Southampton and authorize the clerk to serve notice to the affected property owners in accordance with the Municipal Act. If Council confirms its intention to establish a BIA at their June 23rd meeting, notice will be served on the affected property owner shortly thereafter, and the bylaw could be passed on or after the September 8th Council meeting, provided sufficient opposition is not received. At this time, there is no financial impact.
Thank you, Linda, for that report. The recommendation is that Council gives notice of its intent to consider a bylaw to establish a business improvement area for the area located within the boundaries of the former town of Southampton, and further directs the clerk to provide notice in accordance with the Municipal Act. Comments, questions? Deputy Mayor Charbonneau.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Linda, I was just wondering, and this just occurred to me, so I apologize for not getting you this question before, and I'll understand if you can't answer it, but I just noted the question about the board of a BIA being restricted from funding improvements on private property. Is there an exemption, or are they allowed to provide, to be partners with the municipality in providing funding to improvements on private property under the provisions of a community improvement plan? Are you aware, or, because we are, of course, implementing programs like that in our downtown cores, and the BIAs might be logical partners in those programs.
There may be logical partners, but the funding that's raised by the BIA could not be spent on the private property.
Okay. And I just say, and I just want to put this out there, Mr. Mayor, that I really appreciate once again the work of the Clerk's Department on this project. I think this is a really this is a much improved formed BIA over the one that we have in Port Elgin presently. It's going to, in terms of how it's structured, it's going to enable it to grow over the years. This idea of being able to increase the minimum and maximum levies, depending on the budget of that the board sets, is going to keep it from facing that same problem of being frozen in time financially for 30 years, as happened in Port Elgin, and then a massive correction at the end of the 30 years. I think that this is a well-structured proposal, and I appreciate all the work that's gone into it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Other comments? All in favor of the recommendation? That's carried. The next item on the agenda is the Protective Services Staff Report, and it has to do with the appointment of a weeds inspector. And our Director of Development, Bart.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Bylaw 32-2004 is a bylaw prescribing the standards for maintenance of property within the municipality. Staff is proposing that Ron Courrier and Bart Toby be formally appointed as weed inspectors in order to effectively respond to complaints received regarding weeds on private property. Noxious weeds, as defined by the Weeds Control Act, are becoming more prevalent in our area. One of the main objectives of the weed inspectors is to educate property owners that they have weeds that can cause harm. Noxious weeds, once established in an area, require abatement strategies depending on the species that can take years to gain control over once an area has been infested. It is staff's intent to deal with the noxious weeds located on private property on a complaint basis only and under the guidance of the Ministry of Agriculture and Food, Ministry of Rural Affairs, Agriculture Development Branch, Chief Weed Inspector Mike Cowborough. Both staff have received necessary training and certification from the Ministry to administer the provisions of the Noxious Weed Act. No changes to the town's current program regarding weed control on public roads and ditches conducted through the Public Works Department is proposed.
Thank you, Bart. The recommendation is that Council pass a bylaw to appoint Ron Courrier and Bart Toby as municipal weed inspectors for the town of Saugeen Shores. We'll start with Councillor Huber then.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Bart, can you just elaborate a little bit further? You make a comment in your report that noxious weeds are becoming more prevalent in our area. Two questions. What weeds? And my second comment is it possible for you to, not tomorrow, but sometime soon, maybe include something on the municipal website just with, some pictures of the ones that are taking over, becoming more prevalent, just because you say this is about education. So I'm just curious, which ones are showing up more?
There's approximately 26 weeds that are becoming more prevalent in this area. That list constantly changes. So like this year, they took off milkweed. Came off the list, and they added 2 or 3 more. Some of the terminology I couldn't give to you, and I would probably get it wrong. So I'd rather just, I'll update the website and give it to you that way because I'd hate to really mess up the terminology. But they are moving, and weeds are becoming more prevalent, and some of them are very difficult to get rid of once they are here, and can be not only detrimental to agricultural crops, which is the true definition of a noxious weed, but also can be very devastating to individuals who get caught up into them. So.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. You're probably familiar with Russian knapweed, are you? Russian knapweed, it's cool stuff, and it crowds out everything else and takes pastures completely over, and we have probably 2 or 3 miles of it on the sides of our roads, and it's very difficult to control. So one of the things you guys will be doing is going out and saying, yes, indeed, this is Russian knapweed, and we have to deal with it. I'm looking forward to that.
Yes.
Because it hasn't been happening very well.
No, and part of this is that we can't do it. We have to educate people so that they can do it and give them the tools and, allow them the ability to actually, correct situations where we have problems.
A lot of this is on municipal property.
It's part of that education.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Nothing more on weeds? All in favor of the recommendation then? That's carried. One other information report there, it has to do with Highway 21 rail crossing. I know Stuart's not here, but there's some information on it there for you. I think it's really saying that we know what we've already, I'm sure you're all aware of what's in that report. I mean, they haven't done anything with this reconstruction. They're not going to do anything, and we're going to have a meeting and perhaps push it along a little farther. Good luck with Mr. Whoever the new minister will be next week. Oh, I'm sure there'll be a new minister, but
Ahmed, it was interesting. The road work that's going on, they had to obviously do something just north of the rail trail crossing, right underneath the road, because it's a different texture. So I had a couple of phone calls. Oh, what's going on with the rail trail? Unfortunately, it was just connected to the other project.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, Mr. Mayor, they replaced the culvert there, but it's still too small to crawl through with your bike, I think. We tried it, but didn't quite make it. The only comment I want to make is that this is sort of arises from a request that I made to staff, and I'm grateful to them for moving it forward, both the Director of Community Services and the CAO. And I think what my hope is, and what I would like to see us accomplish by doing this, is to come up with some sort of Saugeen Shore solution to this problem. Something that come up with an idea of our own that we can put to MTO. The Director of Public Works is in ongoing conversations with them, and that is good. But I think where we fell down a bit in the last couple of years working on this is that we didn't really have our own idea to put on the table and say, this is what we'd like to see you do. We instead had to go to the MTO because we didn't have that and ask them for their ideas and solutions, and as a result of that we got a couple of signs. And so we need to approach it differently, and I think that this is the start of trying to do that, and they have expressed, at least they have made it clear that I don't know if they've expressed that they're willing to deal with it, but they have said that they are willing to continue to talk about it anyway after this project that's currently underway is complete. So we're taking that as an opening, and we're going to have some conversations and hopefully move the issue forward. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. That's the end of our agenda. We'll start with Council with Councillor Frost.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have anything to report. I've been busy putting crops in for the last 2 weeks, so we finally got spring, and now that that's done, we'll see what happens. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to note, if you haven't noticed, the Southampton sign at the beer store has been revitalized, and the landscaping was trimmed so you can actually see the bottom of the sign now, so that's a good thing. Also, the graffiti, it was funny, one of the reports mentioned graffiti. The graffiti on the water tower has been covered up again, so that's a good thing too. The Huron Shores run on Saturday, which I didn't run, I didn't rollerblade, I didn't bike, but living in that neighborhood, holy smokes, there were a lot of people in town, and they were sticking around longer, so whatever was going on with that leisure fair must have been a big improvement over last year, because they were in town for longer. And I was outside working, and people going by were telling me they were from Owen Sound and Guelph and all over the place. So kudos to all those people that organized that. The Propeller Club also had a very successful plant sale that we're revitalizing some of the garden spaces down at Pioneer Park, and we've already had 2 weddings in there, but I guess I'll just put out a challenge. The docks are in at the island, the water's up a little bit, the tour boat's ready to go, so if you have not yet seen the light, this could be your season to book there's no early booking discount, but be a good chance to see Chantry Island. Tomorrow, crew members are getting first aid upgrades, so everything's good to go with the tour program. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Shildroth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On May the 31st, hats off to Sylvia Sherrod that was here not that long ago, the Pretty in Pink Gala. It was a great event. For those that weren't there, it's a once-in-a-lifetime transformation of what I called the curling club. The right name's the annex, but you would not have recognized that actually that's where people curl. It was exceptionally done, and it was a significant fundraiser for the kickoff for the hospital. This Friday is the Relay for Life reminder, and I'd like to share with Council a brand new event that's going to be sponsored by the Port Elgin Rotary Club. As many of you are aware, the Lobster Fest is no longer. After many successful years with the museum, it was felt that it was time to wrap that event up. So we're going to have something we called Rib Fest. And stay tuned. I'll try and bring some details on that, but it's going to be at a very popular spot on the shoreline, North Shore Park, and as always, the backup will be the Plex here. So the chamber is actually doing the tickets. If you'd like to get some tickets, they're $35 for adults, and under 12 is $15. So I'll bring you some more details as the event gets closer, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thanks, Fred. Vice Deputy Mayor Gallagher.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just here in Charles Run, it doubled in size this year, and that's phenomenal for our community. And it's going to double in size again next year. I was surprised that we didn't have more storefront stuff going on in support of it. There were a ton of people in our community, literally hundreds. And I think there's an opportunity for both the VIA and the Southampton business guys to take advantage of that and make it an even bigger event and an even more successful event, because not everybody walked or rolled or trotted down the street. There were lots of people walking around looking for opportunities to leave money here, and I think we can help them out in a better way. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Doug. Councilor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Last week we had our Parks and Trails meeting at Little Fairy Lake, and actually we even saw some trout in there. Never caught it, but it was there. There was some discussion with the M&R about the carp in there. Nothing really came about that. And also discussed the naming policy for Parks and Trails, of which we will have more info at a later date. Last Thursday was the first Cruisers Cruise Night, again raising money for the Saugeen Memorial Hospital. And also again this year that money will go towards the cancer. And just a plug for the Southampton Art Society. Saturday, July 5th, it's called 50 Little Masterpieces. And there are going to be 50 tickets sold and 50 masterpieces handed out. So everyone who buys a ticket is assured a masterpiece. And tickets are $25 each. It is at the Southampton Art Gallery, and you can get your tickets at the Southampton Art Gallery. And I didn't plant anything in the field this week. Thank you.
Councilor Seaman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Last Wednesday, fairly busy day. Started the day off pouring coffee at Tim Hortons, their annual Kids Day, send a kid to camp. Kudos for Tim Hortons for doing that every year. It certainly helps a lot of underprivileged children to get away from home and enjoy things in the outdoors. Later in that day, the fireman got me out of retirement to help cook fish at the G.C. Houston Public School, and I was very pleased to be there to help celebrate the 60-year anniversary of the public school. I wasn't there at the opening today, but I was just around the corner. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple meetings, I guess, a DRAC meeting, and it's nice to see the BIA start to come together and the whole DRAC, having the two BIAs at the meeting, the representatives from the two downtowns, and talk about some of the issues that are in common and some of the things that are happening. So it's great to be a part of that. Also attended the Parks and Trails meeting, and Councillor Brown forgot to mention that our next meeting, thanks to Pat O'Connor, is going to be scheduled at the Lighthouse. So we'll be out at the Lighthouse having a meeting in September. I think we're aiming to do that. So I'm looking forward to that. And also last Tuesday I had the pleasure of volunteering. I got the T-shirt. So I spent the day with Habitat for Humanity on the build site and learned some really neat things about how to put a top plate on and how to level it. And then we were all getting ready to go home at 4 o'clock, and then the stone slinger showed up, and we had to bury the O-pipe. So we got out there about 6:30 or so. But it was a fun day, and I plan on going back and challenge members of council to come out and join me for a day of building. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Sherbrooke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I like Councillor Seaman. I spent part of the day on the 4th working the drive-through in Port Elgin at the Tim Hortons, and that is a job that I could not do full-time. Very difficult, but it was lots of fun, and got to see lots of people and raise some money, which was good, and congratulate Tim Hortons for doing that again. And on the same day after I left that, I walked downtown Port Elgin and attended the Port Elgin Farmers Market and went for a walk around and checked things out, and I'm happy to report that things went very well there, I think, and I think from what I heard from the organizers, there was lots of good cooperation from municipal staff and a lot of assistance in getting it set up, and they were very appreciative of that and of the municipality's support. So another great event, and looking forward to many more of those. And I'm still planting things in the field and won't be done anytime soon. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Well, everything I've done has been mentioned, so I'll take a motion to adjourn. Fred and Ton, all in favor? I'd like to call to order this regular council meeting of the town of Saugeen Shores. And the first order of business is a declaration of pecuniary interest, and I'll remind each member of their responsibility. Nothing, then the next item on the agenda is adoption of minutes, and it's been moved by Deputy Mayor Charbonneau, seconded by Councillor Legault, that council adopt the minutes of the council meeting of May 26, 2014 as presented. Any errors, omissions, comments? All in favor? That's carried. Next is committee of the whole minutes of May the 26th, and it's been moved by Councillor Brown, seconded by Councillor Seaman, that council note and file the committee of the whole minutes of May 26, 2014. Any errors or comments? All in favor? That's carried. Next item on the agenda then is a report of the committee of the whole. It's a general government report, and it's been moved by Deputy Mayor Charbonneau, seconded by Councillor Legault. The Council of the Town of Saugeen Shores adopts the general government report dated May 26, 2014, recommending the following: that the amount of $16,460 be provided to as a grant in lieu to the Habitat for Humanity project, and 2, that permission be granted to the BIA to hold the farmers market on Coulter Park every Wednesday from June 4th to September the 24th, 2014, and further that provisional permission be granted to the Port Elgin BIA to close Green Street from Goddard Street westerly to the BMTS Alley every Wednesday from June 4th to September 24th to allow the farmers market expanded space with the resulting impacts to be closely monitored through the first weeks of the operation. Any comments, questions? All in favor? That's carried. Next is the Community Services Parks and Recreation report, and it's been moved by Councillor Seaman and seconded by Councillor Brown that Council of the Town of Saugeen Shores adopts the Community Services Parks and Recreation report dated May the 26th, 2014, recommending that Council approve a street furniture placement at the Southampton Town Hall as a pilot project. Questions or comments? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. The next item is our bylaws, and the first one is a bylaw to authorize a memorandum of understanding with Lord Elgin Estates Development Limited, and it's been moved by Councillor Huber and seconded by Councillor Frost that bylaw 51-2014, being a bylaw to authorize a memorandum of understanding with Lord Elgin Estates Development Limited respecting the further transfers of the two archaeologically significant sites, is hereby read a first, second, and third time, and finally passed and sealed this 9th day of June 2014. Any questions or comments to that? All in favor then? That's carried. The next item is that authorize agreements for the police services funding, and that's been moved by Councillor Brown, seconded by Councillor Seaman. That bylaw 52-2014, being a bylaw to authorize two agreements with Her Majesty the Queen, represented by the Minister of Community Safety and Correctional Services, and the Saugeen Shores Police Services Board for the provision of funding, is hereby read a first, second, and third time, and finally passed and sealed this 9th day of June 2014. Any questions or comments to this motion? All in favor? That's carried. The next item then is an official plan amendment for Piper's Glen, and it's been moved by Vice Deputy Mayor Gowanlock and seconded by Councillor Seaman, the bylaw 53-2014, being a bylaw to adopt amendment number 2 to the Town of Saugeen Shores Local Official Plan 90-2012 by Red Hawk Construction Company Limited for lands described as 2089 Bruce Road 17, Saugeen Shores, is hereby read a first, second, and third time, and finally passed and sealed this 9th day of June 2014. There's the bylaws that are on your package. Well, there'll be a correction there. It'll say, where it says Saugeen Township, they will be reprinted to say Saugeen Shores. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Huber.
It's a very cool package, so it'll be interesting to see how it unfolds over time, but all of the servicing, taking water and all of that, the developer's responsible for all of those expenses? Okay, thank you.
Did you want to speak? Yeah, no, I nodded yes. So, any other comments? All in favor? That's carried. The next item is the rezoning then for the Piper's Glen, and it's been moved by Councillor Shildroth and seconded by Vice Deputy Mayor Gowanlock, the bylaw 54-2014. Being a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw number 75-2006, being the comprehensive zoning bylaw for the Town of Saugeen Shores by Red Hawk Construction Company Limited, for lands described as 2089 Bruce Road 17, Saugeen Shores, is hereby read a first, second, and third time, and finally passed and sealed this 9th day of June 2014. Any questions or comments to that motion? Or bylaw, excuse me. All in favor then? Yep. Sorry, Diane?
Just wondered, by doing this, are we creating this lifestyle commercial special zone LC? We can just add a title that didn't exist prior. Okay, thank you.
Okay. And the answer is yes. So for anybody, as if I'm just nodding, nobody's seen that. Any other questions? All in favor? That's carried. The next item then is a bylaw, and it has to do with the site plan for the Heinrich Property Corporation. There's, I believe, there's an information report. I'll read the bylaw, and if anybody has any questions, I'm sure everybody's read it, but I don't think there's any need to read the whole thing, but you can direct the questions to the director. It's been moved by Councillor Frost and seconded by Councillor Shildroth, the bylaw 55-2014, being a bylaw to authorize a site plan agreement with Heinrich Property Corporation, is hereby read a first, second, and third time, and finally passed and sealed this 9th day of June 2014. Any questions or comments to the bylaw or the site plan? Councillor Huber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do understand that, efforts were made to engage some conversation back and forth, and hopefully, some good things will come from the development. I just would like to express some disappointment that a berm that I realize is on the developer's property for the most part, but taking that high berm down to a 2-foot mound and planting and putting a fence up and planting mature trees. And I question the definition of mature trees. Like, a mature tree to me is a 50, 60-year-old tree in town. I'm disappointed that the berm is not, that a little more of it wasn't able to be retained. I do understand, though, that discussions did happen, but I just would like to note my disappointment. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments? All in favor? That's carried. And the next amendment is to lift the holding provisions from the Heinrich property, and it's been moved by it's a bylaw. It's been moved by Councillor Legault, seconded by Deputy Mayor Charbonneau, that bylaw 57-2014, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Town of Saugeen Shores, is hereby read a first, second, and third time, finally passed and sealed this 9th day of June 2014. Questions or comments to that? Did I miss one? 56. Oh, yes. It's my filing system I have up here. I apologize for that. I'll go back to this one then. So this is for the holding provision, and it's been moved by Councillor Shildroth and seconded by Vice Deputy Mayor Gallagher that bylaw 56-2014, being a bylaw to remove the holding H provision from the lands described as 197 Albert Street South, Town of Saugeen Shores, is hereby read a first, second, and third time, finally passed and sealed this 9th day of June 2014. Any questions or comments to this? All in favor? That's carried. Now we'll get to 57. Moved by Councillor Legault, seconded by Deputy Mayor Charbonneau, the bylaw 57-2014, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Town of Saugeen Shores, is hereby read a first, second, and third time, and finally passed and sealed this 9th day of June 2014. All in favor? That's carried.
I hereby confirm that bylaws 51-2014 through to including bylaw 57-2014 have been read a third time and passed this 9th day of June 2014.
Been moved by Councillor Legault, seconded by Deputy Mayor Charbonneau, that this regular council meeting of June 9, 2014 hereby adjourned at 9:24 p.m. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you.